Hey, what's up, y'all? This is me here, Michael Franti, and welcome to this week's episode of the Stay Human podcast presented by Gibson Guitars. I'm super excited today because I have some guests I've been looking forward to speaking to for a few weeks now. And you may remember a few episodes ago, we had Andrew DeAngelo of the Last Prisoner Project on the show. And so I wanted to do just a deeper dive into the amazing work that organization is doing with regard to cannabis, criminal justice reform. And so this week we've got Corvain Cooper and Evelyn LaChapelle, who are both formerly unjustly incarcerated themselves and are now dedicating their lives to this cause. In 2013, Corvain received a life sentence without parole after a third strike for his participation in a cannabis distribution operation. And despite the relatively minor offense, he was effectively buried alive at a federal prison in Louisiana, apart from his wife and two children, for something that was increasingly becoming legalized across the country. And through his years in prison, activists and voters continued the campaign to relax cannabis laws across the U.S., and Corvain finally and fortunately received a grant of executive clemency in 2021. And he now serves as an advisor to the Last Prisoner Project, and he's a brand ambassador for 40 Tons Cannabis, both of which are dedicated to freeing prisoners affected by unjust cannabis laws. And in 2013, Evelyn LaChapelle was convicted on 3 charges related to her minor role in a marijuana distribution operation, and she was sentenced to 87 months in prison with no prior record. In 2019, she was released from federal custody and began her 4-year probation sentence. And Evelyn is now building her own luxury cannabis essential brand called 87, which represents the 87 months she was sentenced to prison. It's a story of defeat and victory, and she plans to push this brand and industry forward by normalizing cannabis consumption with luxury cannabis essentials. And she is a program associate at the Last Prisoner Project, and her mission is to build a platform for the formerly incarcerated to find their path into the cannabis industry, which is so important. So please welcome to the Stay Human podcast today, Evelyn and Corvain. How you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good.
Thank you for having us. What a mouthful.
It was a mouthful, but I felt like it was worth really just laying it out of what you guys have been through, because, it just seems so crazy to me that we have people who are still receiving these kinds of harsh sentencing, even though cannabis reform has been going on in our states for, 15, 20 years now. And yet there's still people who are receiving these ridiculous sentences that never should have been there in the first place. And it's important that to me, at least as someone who has, enjoyed cannabis for a long time, that the industry, as it becomes a, legitimized industry, really recognizes the role that people have played during Prohibition, the loss, the suffering, as well as the science, technology, things that people created along the way to advance cannabis where it is today. Mm-hmm. I want to go into more of that later, but I want to talk to each of you about your story. So, Corvain, I want to start with you. Just tell me, where were you raised? How did you grow up? What kind of home were you brought up in?
I was raised by my grandmother, and my parents was in the street. My dad, he sold drugs, and my mother was on drugs. So I got to see the whole thing from a different view, from a different vision. But I got to see how the drugs can tear you down, because my mother wasn't originally on drugs. My mother's a college graduate who was my teacher in preschool and my teacher in kindergarten. You see what I'm saying? So I got to see that the effect that it had by my mother being the first person in our family to actually graduate from college and go to Cal State and get her degree and really, go forward her life, and to see how the 80s with the crack epidemic can tear that apart and tear her down. And then it can bring my dad up as far as in money wise, but not in time wise, as actually physically spending physical time. So when you're raised with, my allowance was $500 a week. You see what I'm saying? So I got $2,000 a month as a kid.
Wow.
but I'd spend it unwisely on, on tennis shoes or whatever it is that was knew that was out. But what happens when you have that, when you and your sister have, me and my sister, when you're growing up in the ghetto and you're trying to chase the imaginary stuff, we could have saved all that money, but we wanted to keep up with the Joneses and buy all the things that we didn't need, so we bought the things that we didn't need, and you can never get enough of the stuff. So when you're buying all this stuff, it turns you to, when that gets cut off, and my dad ended up going to the feds when I was 16, 17. So now I'm cut off.
Yeah.
He got me a car and all that, but now I'm cut off of the
like being an addict.
So now I'll figure out how to keep this stuff up that I was just getting.
Yeah.
So now this is where the hustling comes in. I need a regular job wasn't paying that at the time. Back in the day, minimum wage was $5, $6. So I started hustling, and then here we are today. It just keeps going and going and going. You climb up the ladder, and now you want the better car, and you want the better this, and you want the better, because I left my granny out. She worked for Harrison Ford. So I seen the better. I knew what the better was at a young age. I knew what a mansion looked like, and I knew what I really wanted out of life. I knew I wanted to see at least how that felt at one point in my life, to see. And my dad had all the nice cars and jewelry and stuff like that, as far as on the ghetto level, so he was hood rich, you feel what I'm saying? But I got to see hood rich, and I got to see for real rich. So it changed my dynamics, and it changed my swag on things that I want to do. And my grandmother kept me in the best of schools. So I had great education. I stayed in magnet schools my whole entire career, so that was pretty good for me, and that helped mold me.
When were you first incarcerated?
My first arrest was in juvenile hall, actually. I was 15 years old. That was my first arrest for like a petty theft.
Do you remember what happened in your family life when, like, for example, what did your grandma think when this, her baby is now caught up?
Oh, she was crushed. She was crushed because I was in the 11th grade. I was turning 16, so I was going to the 11th grade, and I had to miss 7 months because they sent me to camp. You see what I'm saying? So I had to get out, go to continuation to graduate on time. I couldn't let her down. She kept me in all the great schools. My grandmother always had my back. She was my rock. It would just let her down if I didn't graduate on time. So I had to do double time to get out to graduate on time, to make sure that I did that for her. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to really even do it for myself at that point. At that point, I was hustling already. I was already cashing checks and hustling. So the graduating thing was really for my grandmother, and let her know that I can complete something if I put my mind to it, and I wouldn't never let her down at no cost.
Evelyn, tell me about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
I grew up not too far from San Francisco. I grew up in Oakland with my mom, who was a bartender, so single parent, me and my sister bartending all night. So it was me and my sister, and then my dad remarried when I was 3, and so I had my stepmom, who was like my rock. And so for me, childhood was pretty simple. It was 2 moms, weekends with them, Monday through Friday with her, private school, Catholic school. We tried public school for a little while, the boys. So to get me away from the boys, it was back to private school. And then I moved to Los Angeles as soon as I turned 18 for university, trust fund baby. My grandfather had paid for all of my education prior to losing him. And so I went to Loyola Marymount. And childhood was, you're from the Bay. So it's cannabis, growing up with cannabis. It was never a crime. It was never taboo. It was, I was introduced to it in high school, really didn't grasp it and love it until college. But when we get to the conspiracy part, it's just being in California and being in Oakland, cannabis was just never fazed me in terms of you could get in trouble for this.
Yeah. So when you were a kid growing up, were you somebody who was into school or not into school? Were you focused? Or?
I was in between. And I was in between in the sense that it wasn't a priority for my mom. So what was a priority for her is the house clean? You know, like, did you clean up before she got home at 4 o'clock? It was never, was your homework done? And so I skated through up until probably my 10th or 11th grade in high school, just because it was a new environment. Catholic, the nuns don't play at St. Elizabeth. And so then learning how to get into school. But I don't think I really grasped it until probably like my second year. And then I fell in love. Once I got my first A, I was like, oh, this is not hard. Once I took my first African-American studies class, I was hooked.
Okay. So when you got to Loyola Marymount, did you go all the way through school and you discovered cannabis started becoming a part of your life? And then how did it become?
It was a part of my life before Loyola. I got to LA in 2000.
Mom's not gonna watch this. I ain't gonna talk.
She's not gonna watch it. No, I had a roommate then, and she always blames me because I am like the pothead. She's like, you turned her out, but it's the truth. The roommate was the one who had all the weed connections. And so I started at West LA, and so the community college. So by the time I got to Loyola, I was already consuming daily. But I love cannabis, and it was love at first sight for me.
And then what led up to your arrest? You'd never been arrested before?
No. So the arrest came as a serious shock because I had been involved in the cannabis conspiracy in 2009 for a period of 9 months. And then 4 years has gone by. I've graduated from LMU. I've had my daughter. I've married her father. And I've just moved back to the Bay Area. And a nosy neighbor calls the cops. I'm at my mom's house, a suspicious car, which was crazy because it was a brand new Nissan Z, nothing suspicious about it. And I had stepped outside to smoke, and they called the police. And so when the sheriff arrived still, because it's 2012 at the time, so cannabis has legalized to some extent. I don't have any amounts of weed in the car. The only weed that's in the car has already been smoked. So when the officer comes to the car, I'm like, don't worry about it, because I'm in the car with a friend. I'm like, he's gonna go home. I'm gonna go upstairs. We're good. And he's like, okay, what's your name? Gave him my name. And next thing I know, I am in the back of the police car. There's a warrant for my arrest. And the only thing that he can tell me is it's a warrant from ICE. So immediately you're like, immigration. You know, my mom comes outside trying to explain to him, no, she was born in San Leandro. Like, it's this whole thing. But I don't find out until the arraignment, almost 4 days after sitting in the county jail, that it was for the cannabis conspiracy from 2009.
And so how were you involved in that?
I don't know who should take this part of the story, me or Corvain. So for 9 months, there was the cannabis profits were being deposited into my bank account. Okay. So I received 87 months strictly for depositing cannabis profits into my bank account.
Yeah. And just so people have some context, what were the laws in California in 2012?
I can't be exact, but I know medicinally it had already been legalized. Dispensaries were already open. It did not become recreational, I think, until 2017, but I'll have to be fact checked. But I was incarcerated. So can you imagine being incarcerated for cannabis when California recreationally legalizes it, and knowing that no one is paying, no one is even concerned, and that I had waived all of my rights to an appeal.
Wow. And you did that as part of a plea when you...
No plea. There was no plea. Me, Corvain, and Natalia Wade all went to trial. And so we pled not guilty. Natalia and I both received 87 months, but Natalia and I both waived our rights to an appeal because under the guidelines, they were well within their rights to give us both 24 years in prison. And so to avoid the 24 years, we waived all of our rights to an appeal.
And then Corvain, you were on a third strike at that time?
Yeah, I had one prior for selling marijuana and one prior for a bottle of codeine, which later on I got taken off my jacket being one of the campaigns for Prop 64 and Prop 47. So those were taken off my jacket. But yeah, that was continued by being my third strike as far as when going to court. I got the third strike for that, and that's how I ended up with the life sentence at the trial.
Wow, for a prior cannabis offense and a codeine offense.
That was
one time. Yeah, they were both dropped. Don't leave that part out. They're no longer on my record.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're not on my record today. So the courts even turned that down. That we went to the courts and we tried to go to the Supreme Court and I begged for 10 years. That's how I know that this is a purpose. And I'm standing on my purpose and moving with my mission is because we begged for 10 years after we got the things dropped in 2016. So we just begged the federal court to just give us time served, and we were denied on all courts.
So what was that like for you when you heard just the word like life? And I mean, what did it feel like when you're in the courtroom? And then what did it feel like when you finally like get sent up and now you're there going, man, is this how my life, forever, what did that feel like for you?
What it is it's like, you can't inhale it because by you being in prison and you see the other people that have life, right? And you see as you go into court and you're fighting your case, you're seeing how other people are taking it or are coming back with a lot of time that are coming back in court. The feds aren't passing out 5 days in there. So there's a lot of people that's coming back. This person might come back with life, or this person, my homeboy came back with 60 years, Parker Coleman, who I'm advocating for today, and who I just talked to 20 minutes ago. So you see people and you're seeing how they're dealing with it and how they're saying, they want to die in there, or they don't want to take it, or they'll never let the system see them do this many years. And, those kind of talks are going through their heads. So I have 2 daughters. I have a mother. I was raised by nothing but women. And I'm like, the rock to my family. So when I leave, the glue leaves, everything breaks down. So I just had to stand firm and say, I'm not accepting this. I'm not doing life. And that's what I stood on. And that's what came out. And that was the outcome of it.
Evelyn, what was it like for you? You came from an experience where you probably never imagined this was going to happen. And now, never been in jail before, and boom, there you are.
Yeah, I spent my first night on suicide watch because I inhaled it. It was absolutely devastating for me. And it wasn't like 87 months you're going to prison. It was 87 months you're not a mother anymore. 87 months you don't get to pick up your daughter from school. She's 4 when I leave. She's 9 when I come home. And almost 2 years later, still just getting to know each other because of that chunk that they had taken. It took me, I would say, getting to the federal prison because we sat in the county. What was also unfair is that we both sat in the county jail. I sat in the county jail for almost 2 years, and county jails are really only meant to, hold you for a couple of months. And so I sat there for 23 months. And up until sentencing, I'm telling myself it's going to be time served. It's going to be time served. And so I'm still living day to day thinking that this is about to be over. But then to get the 87 months and to then get to prison, I had to learn very early on from suicide watching on that the only way that I was going to mentally survive this was to just cut off from the outside world. I couldn't control my daughter's diet, which is extremely big for me. But I lost my stepmom, I lost my grandmother. And so all of that would have ate me alive had I not learned how to just emotionally just remove all of that. And that's what as unhealthy as that is as an adult, that is how I survived prison.
Yeah. So how did you guys both eventually end up being released?
I got a clemency from President Trump on his last 2 seconds in office. You know what I mean? Like, so he hit like a 3-pointer from the other side of the court, because at 11:38, my name still wasn't on the list. At 11:38, you only got to 12 o'clock to sign the paper. So I'm one of the last people that he pardoned. So I feel that's for a reason. And that's why I'm here today. You know what I mean? And we just trademarked it at 40 tons that executive clemency is better than the lottery. So we own that now. And that's what I think. I think executive clemency is better than the lottery. There's no feeling like it.
Yeah. So what was that like? Just talk me through that day. You know, you're sitting there, and who was advocating for you to get on that list?
We got the Last Prisoner Project. They were very, very, very influential in my release. And you got Brittany K. Barnett and the Buried Alive Project. You got Alice Johnson. You got Weldon Angelos, the Mission Green. So you got the Freedom Girl. It's not just one person.
Yeah.
You got to thank my attorney, Patrick McGruer. He actually wrote the clemency to ask Trump himself. When you read my actual change.org, we got 156,000 signatures. So shout out to the people with 156,000 signatures. You see what I'm saying? So, it was a Sherry Sakar is the first person who ever have a poster of me. So it's a group of people. It's Marijuana Matters. It's not just one person that's responsible. God placed millions of people in my life in order. The BET documentary was influential. I was on the BET documentary Smoke, November 18th. That was big, and everything just worked all together. And this ain't no feeling. It's no feeling that I don't think that can match it.
How did you get word?
Okay, well, I'm going to the shower in the morning. I told this story. I hate telling it, but I'm gonna tell it to you again. But we're going to the shower. We just been on like a 90-day lockdown. It's real violent in the prison. So I was at one of the most violent prisons in the world. It's crazy now that they're calling. They're saying like they're not even locking down. Like 8 people just got stabbed within the last month, and they're not even locking down anymore. They're just used to people getting stabbed. That's how bad it is. So anyway, so I've after seeing murders and suicides and and seeing all this stuff go on, and you have to really be on guard. Like you can't even go to the phone. Going to the phone is dangerous. But. So to go through this and to survive all this, and then them knock on your door and open your door and tell you that you're going home under these circumstances, like I hadn't even had a hair. I'm a person that gets his haircut every 3-4 days. I didn't even have a haircut in like 94 or 5 days. So I had like a little mini fro with a big beard, and it was just, I'm real like clean cut. So it was just like a big deal when he comes to the door after we've been handcuffed to go to the shower. So to open your door in a USP, that's like a big deal on a lockdown. That's a security breach. Yeah. So I just got handcuffed to go to the shower. So there's no reason that you can be opening my door but to tell me to go home, because they're not opening the door for no other reason. There's another reason they can't open your door. You have to put your hands through a slot and get handcuffed to go to the shower. So he comes back and he says, shit, you got 5 minutes to pack your shit up. Now, mind me, this is the next day. I've already have accustomadly thought in my mind that I just got to do this time. You feel what I'm saying? Like this time, I'm gonna have to sit and do this time and wait on Biden, because Trump just got on the airplane, right?
Yeah.
Waving by. When I look to my left to go to the shower at 6 a.m, and Biden's getting inaugurated in. So it's over. You know what I mean? The waiting on this whole push of, you were the top runner. I was just on the front cover of New York Times, my attorney arguing with Trump. All of this, the whole hula is over. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. You see what I'm saying? Like, It's over.
You're like,
so now I had already not gave up, but it's like, you might as well, you know what I mean? Like, you might as well give up. So he told me the way to go. I called my mom. I'm calling her crying. She like, what you crying for? Ivanka just called me at like 12:30 and said you coming on. You feel what I'm saying? So, it was a moment in history that it just lasts forever. It's gonna last forever.
Wow. Evelyn, what was your experience?
My coming home, not so exciting. But in order for
How
me
much
to
time did you do all together?
I was going to start. I did a total of 5 years, 3 months. I got my good time off, and then I completed the residential drug program because if you sell weed, you're also addicted to weed. And so that gets you, it got me, I think, a total of 10 months off. And so I was released to halfway house. And so my homecoming was like at the airport, my whole family is there, but then you have to go straight into custody again. And so I had 5 months of home confinement at the halfway house in Oakland by the lake. So it was still like being home. And then my official release date was February the 1st, 2019. I would say that sort of the biggest struggle though is coming home, and I'm sure Corvain can speak to this, is like, okay, you've sat down for this amount of years and then you come home and no one is like waiting. It's like, oh, here's your kids, here's your bills, here's your responsibility, here's go get on your feet. And there is like no time to take a deep breath. And so I just hit the ground running, thinking that this is not going to be that hard for me. I have my resume, I have my college education, I'm first time offender, my appearance doesn't say felon. And I walk into my first corporate job doing what I was doing prior to being incarcerated. I was a sales and catering coordinator for weddings and events in the hospitality industry. So I get my job at the Omni thinking this is done. I'm not looking back. I have no intentions of being an advocate. I have no intentions of sharing my story. And then a coworker Googled my name, took it to HR, and the HR representative asked me to pack my belongings and leave the building in the middle of a workday. And it was like, that's when I knew that this shit was getting real, and that what I thought was behind me is really, going to continue to walk side by side with me. Like, this is not going away. For instance, my homeowners association, they have opening on the board. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to apply because they really get on my nerves there. But part of being qualified is you have to pass a criminal background check. So I don't even qualify to be on the HOA of my little condo.
Wow. So I want to hear also about your coming back to your family, and in particular, your daughter. What was that like after all these years?
That was rough. And it was rough because I had been mommy in the visiting room. So I am mommy with the snacks. I am mommy with the card games. We're playing chess. We're playing.
When you went in, how old was she?
She was 4, but it took me 2 years to see her because there was no visits at the county jail. There were visits, but we were on the other side of the country and visits were only 30 minutes. So I didn't see her until she was 6. When they transferred me to Victorville. And then for those remaining 3 years, it was visitation. And this is when I knew that damage had been done, as if I didn't already. But they allowed me to furlough from Victorville to Arizona, and I got to ride in the car with her. So when it's time to drop me off at the next prison, I'm getting out of the car and I'm being strong and she's being strong, and silently she has tears rolling down her face. And I knew that I had taught my child how to hold that in, right? Because to silently cry at the age of 8, like that takes real restraint. And my daughter had already been trained how to cut off just, from the multiple visits. And so coming home with no real waiting period. Now I'm mommy that's like, did you eat your carrots and your broccoli? Did you do your homework? There's no cartoons after. Like I really don't play on this mommy thing. And so there was no, we really couldn't find our groove in the beginning because that's not who she had knew. She had just knew the lady with the snacks at the vending machine. And so I was just fortunate enough to get our own place. I think it's only been 4 or 5 months since we've been in our own home. And I think it's the first time since I've been home where the relationship is starting to recreate itself. But she's a teenager. She's a preteen now. So that's a whole nother ball game.
Just in itself. Corvain,
Right.
what's it been like for you as a father, and just like you said, the role that you play of being like the hub in your family, and being away for all this time, and now how have you readjusted to that side of things?
First of all, it's really, really hard. First of all, my kids are spoiled. That's number one. And number two, I have two girls and they're kind of bossy, so I created these bossy things. And even while I was gone, I would hustle. I would do whatever I could to take care of my family still, and to see if I can if they can get a $200 check from me a month. I made sure that they can do that, so they can just go to the mailbox and expect something, since I wasn't there physically, So, I got my daughter in the stocks, so she called me today. She's up in her stocks, so she's learning that. Skyline has started a business and stuff like that. So, I help, I guess I help. I'm trying to mold them into women, and I wish I could spend more time with them. What I mean? But it's been like a whirlwind, because I had to apologize to them, tell them I'm sorry. Tell them that everything that I took them through. You see what I'm saying? Like being gone and thinking that you're never going to see your father again, the kind of toll and the kind of the pain that I caused.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry for the pain that I caused. You feel what I'm saying? That's the first thing I had to do, was apologize to them, heal them. And, they even broke me in. I did a TikTok with them, so if you look at my page, we did a TikTok, so I just breaking the barriers and just letting them know that they could trust me to tell me anything. And just, just like she said, when you're going, you already missed a chunk of their life. So you got to get to know them too. And they got to get to back know you, to spend these days and spend this time with you. Like, this is a real human being that has been going through stuff and been going through stuff mentally. And, so it's not an easy task. It's not an easy task, but we're growing with it, and we're just taking it day by day,
Evelyn, when you got dismissed from your job at the Omni, I mean, that must have been just such a hard wake-up call. I mean, you'd already been spending time in prison, just feeling like you'd been treated unfairly, which you clearly were. And now, weed is legal, and you're still paying the price for some draconian laws from ages ago, and now you're fired from this job that you were perfectly qualified for, working hard at. You're thinking your life is going to get back on track. What did that bring up inside you in terms of, you as an entrepreneur, you as an advocate, you as a mother?
This is what it did. It made me cry first. I walked out and I cried. And I do not, that's not something I do, right? So it penetrated deeper than I had allowed anything else to really do in the last 5 years. And then it pissed me off. It was like, because now I'm pissed off that you fired me, and I'm really pissed off that you made me cry. And so it was really at that point, it was two things. It was like, okay, do I have to be a waitress for the rest of my life? Because prior to that, I was waitressing 3 jobs and running around like crazy. I had finally maybe found a position that would allow me to get my own place for her. And so now that I'm fired, it was like the perfect storm for.
Hey,
you're
not talking about the
it was the perfect storm for the advocacy work that would come. Shortly after being fired, Corvain Cooper introduced me to Steve DeAngelo at Last Prison Project. I met Steve DeAngelo, Mary, and Sarah, and it sort of rebirth, because I didn't think that it was unjust. The feds do a really good job at convincing you that you belong in prison, that you have committed a terrible crime, so terrible that you don't even deserve to be a mother. So I didn't come home thinking I didn't deserve to be in prison. That's what Last Prisoner Project did for me. And I say it all the time, like every time that they ask me to share my story, every opportunity that I've gotten, that shame, that guilt, all of that just sort of starts to disappear because I spent all of that time really thinking that I had done something terrible. So to have an audience and to have folks, validate that I did not belong there has truly been the blessing in all of this.
Corvain, how have you made the switch from being, incarcerated and then freed, and now you're an entrepreneur?
Well, if you like follow my page or Instagram, right? May 6th of 2020, right? This is with a life sentence on a bunk in a room with a man, just stored in a room in a bathroom. I wrote my friend that runs my page, and I told him to post this right now. I said that the same thing that brings me down is going to be the same thing that's going to bring me back up. And I've always stood on that. And once I believe in something or I stand on something, I'm one of those people that's where I'm going with. I'm taking that to the bank, So I stood on it. I came out. I haven't took a day off since I've been out. I've been working since day one. I've been advocating. I've been accepting phone calls. I've been off the GoFundMe money. 10% of that went back to the prison. You know what I mean? And for the things that the stuff that they needed in there that I raised on my GoFundMe. I did a 24-hour fundraiser on Clubhouse, and I sent that back in there. And I still talk to the guys every day, and I still write them, and I still send pictures, and I tell them that I'm going to advocate for them, and I got work to do because I believe that it was a purpose. That I don't think that this is it's a purpose for a person to win the lottery, so it's a purpose for a person to get a clemency of pardon. When you have this many people incarcerated, what's so special about this little old kid from the East Side? You see what I'm saying? So with it not being nothing special, you have to make it something special. And that's what I plan on doing. I plan on making this something special and making history and making this one of the biggest brands in the world.
Great. How many people do we have locked up on cannabis charges in America? Is there anybody that
I say 40,000, but it's more than 40 because you're not counting the people in the state. You're not counting the people overseas. You're not counting the people that is running in and out of jail that just got caught today. It might have been somebody that just got caught 15 minutes ago. His numbers might not be on the thing. So, I don't think their count is accurate, but we're always going to say the 40,000, and we're not stopping to the 40,000 is free.
Okay. Evelyn, what does your advocacy look like on a daily basis? I mean, how is this work that you're doing? How much of your time is this consume in your daily life? And
how much of my time does this consume?
Oh my God.
Currently a little over 80 hours a week. But my advocacy work really was for Corvain Cooper, right? That's why I got involved. That's what every interview was about. And then he came home and I was like, okay, well, I'm done, right? Do I get to quit now? But now there's Parker Coleman, and it's just there's a list of names, that I was unaware of prior, and a list of stories that the advocacy, it doesn't stop, because after hearing Parker's story and how, he was 19 when he went in, I think 19, young, all of his 20s has been spent for this same conspiracy, for this same cannabis. And so when you think about the over 62 people incarcerated at least $45,000 a year to house us, in the federal prison, to think even just the number amount, the dollar amount, that is just, I cannot stop talking about it. And maybe when Parker comes home, I'll say I'm done, and then there'll be another name. But this is what I'm doing all day. Absolutely.
Corvain, talk to me about 40 tons.
40 tons. You can go to 40tons.co right now and get you a hat. Get you a t-shirt. We got the jackets that's custom made that you can get your name on, or whatever it is that you want to do. So we got the jackets. We got the skateboards too, that, we're all going to have our own skateboard. I'm going to have my own. Evelyn's going to have her own. If you're a woman and you're a woman out there and you want to support women that's been incarcerated, get you an Evelyn jacket or get you an Evelyn skateboard or Natalia skateboard with their prison ID. This is my name and that's my prison ID number, and I wear it proudly because I'm on a 10-year thing and I'm retired. It's a retired number that it's retired. It's like hanging your jersey up. I'm done with it, So everything that we do, we're a social impact brand. We're not a nonprofit yet, which we're working on trying to open up our own nonprofit, but we're a social impact brand that we speak for the voiceless. We've got a new Damon Salou. I got another guy that's out of Frisco that we're advocating for. Then it's a veteran. It's another veteran too that just got signed on. So we're building up. We're almost at about five people we got looped. So we're building our people up that we're advocating for and what we're going to do for them. And we want to do stuff like people, it's really tough in there when you're not getting a visit. We want to be able to pay for somebody to get a visit, in the feds, you're usually out of state. So it might be $600, $800 for your people to come see you. We want to raise money and wage awareness for the things that need to help them mentally, So, we just want to be able to build something that's going to last forever. And we want our seat at the table as we're the ones. So I was studying on the corner promoting this drug. This plant, I stood on the cold some nights and I stood in the projects and I risked my life to sell this plant for it to become this big for just nothing but the trust fund kids and the billionaires. They get to make all the money and we don't get a cut. We don't get nothing. We got to come home to nothing. We got to come home and beg and go fund me and stuff like that. There's no seat at the table for us.
Yeah. Evelyn, talk to me about that a little bit. Just what responsibility do you think that people in the cannabis industry today have to this issue, to getting the last prisoner freed?
I think the responsibility is twofold. I think that the entire industry needs to recognize the lobbying power that it has. I think that, for instance, New York just legalized. New York is projected to, I think, over like 50 million in tax revenue in the first 6 months. Now, when we are lobbying to get the state legalized, I think in that argument needs to be in return for the 50 million that you're going to earn. And this is a number that I've pulled off my ass, so please don't fact check me, folks who are listening. But in return for the millions of tax dollars, then we also need you to release those who are incarcerated for cannabis, because I think it's absolutely ridiculous that any state even considers legalization without considering the folks who are still incarcerated, especially in a state like New York, who is known for criminalizing cannabis. So for a fact that you have folks still in prison for cannabis. For the folks that are coming home, I think that the industry has to extend their help, knowledge, expertise, their privileged entry into this industry. They need to extend that to those of us who have been negatively impacted. And I think that they've done an relatively okay job with the social equity programs that states have created. Oakland did a really good job. I think one of the best in the country, but it's still leaving that up to the government, right? So you're fighting over these applications. Capitalists are still coming in and really just grabbing a token Black person and giving them 2% and then, making their millions. And the industry, and I've learned this through watching 40 Tons, and I've learned this through, working at LPP, the industry has an opportunity really to extend their licensing. There's white labeling, there's partnerships, there's all of these ways that these cannabis corporations that are publicly traded on the stock market can lend their name, brand, and their resources and their knowledge. No, I feel like no one's asking for a handout. We're just asking that you recognize that we are the ones who should be in this industry, and everyone else that it's a privilege.
Yeah, I agree. And I would also add to it that the laws need to change, that people who have had convictions cannot even be handling the weed itself. And that's crazy to me.
Which inserts 87, which is why it will be a cannabis essentials brand, because I'm not allowed to be plant touching. I can't go grow. I can't. And opportunities have definitely presented themselves. But because they have scared me, they scared me so good that I am not plant touching until I'm off of papers. And so it's even having to find my way in this industry. How do I create my own brand? When I tell my story, how are people able to support it? And I've had to create that through 87, through Luxury Cannabis Essentials, not by choice, but because I can't plant touch.
That needs to change.
I'm in the same boat as her, so we're missing out. That's why I'm the brand ambassador. So let's keep that clear too, that we're both can't plant touch. We have tons of opportunities on the table that people that you can't even get the opportunity because they won't even let you sit at the table.
Wow. I got one last question for both of you guys, and that is, what does it mean to you to be human? And how do you stay human? I mean, you guys have both gone through something that is so traumatic. When we think of trauma in people's lives, I mean, being incarcerated for something that you never should have been there in the first place for I can't even imagine what that does to your soul. So how have you learned to hold on to your humanity?
I'll start. Brene Brown. I had to do a lot of soul searching. And for that, prison was a blessing. In this world, you do not often get 5 years to sit with yourself. And so I sat with myself, and she said something that changed me forever. And she's speaking about vulnerability and shame. And she says that when you are going through the journey of vulnerability, in order to come out, that you have to tell your story and love yourself while you're telling it. And so I think we all have parts of our story that we are too ashamed to tell, too afraid to tell. But when I was able to sit and tell my entire story, every secret that I've ever kept, and walk away and still love myself, it is a freedom that it exceeded prison, right? And so walking in that daily allows me to just be so authentic and to just be present and to know that every decision that I'm making here, hereafter is mine to own, and I can own it and love it. And it just makes being an adult so much better, right? When you're not just trying to please everyone, and it's just, this is Evelyn, this is my story, this is my journey. And by the way, I love every part of it.
That is so powerful to hear. I mean, that's such a lesson for all of us, of being able to stand in our truth and be able to speak it comfortably, be able to heal from it, and not feel like we have to live a life of shame for anything that we've done in our life, that we can learn from it. Corvain, how about you? What does it mean to you to be human? How do you stay human? How did you stay human when you were locked down?
You stay human with my faith. I think my faith overruled everything else, because that's all I had. So when you don't have nothing and they've taken everything, they've taken your money, they've taken your freedom, they've taken you away from your kids, they've taken you, even out of your own city, so once you lost everything and all you got is God and your faith, I think that's what's made me stronger and make my belief system stronger and made everything stronger, because I had nothing else to lean on. So once I leaned on that and seeing how powerful that is, and I got to learn myself, like she said, no, now that I've been out, I barely have time for myself to spend this type of time with myself. I read over 1,000 books, so, I've read the newspaper every day, or I read the stock market every, it's you don't have that time on the streets, because now you have a overhead that is way up here, especially in California. Overheads are so high, and there you have a $300 a month overhead, so as long as you can go to the store and have a full locker, you're cool. You don't have no lights, no gas, or no cable, or no tissue, or I just left the grocery store. At the grocery store, that was just $200 at the grocery store. You see what I'm saying? Just, so you don't have that in there. So that gives you the strength to stay focused on the things that you need to do, because all you have to do is survive, So now that I've survived through a real jungle, and I've seen people really get murdered with their own hands, not no gun, I've seen somebody get stumped to death, So when you see these type of things happen and you've overcome these things, and I've came out this without a scratch, so I know that God was with me, so just to know that I got God on my side, I think that I can accomplish and climb any mountain there is to climb.
Wow. Hey, you guys, thank you so much. I just have one last question for both of you, which is, how can people help? Where can people go? What can they do? What's the best way for people to get involved?
I say you can go to my GoFundMe right now and keep my reentry going, so you can go to Corvain Cooper on GoFundMe, and that keeps me in front of the computer for an hour. It keeps me in front of the computer for the next, so I can do more interviews. I can't do this at Walmart, so, keep me working, keep me presenting the message, keep me telling the story, and keep me broaden the whole thing. And if you can't do that, then get you a hat, support the brand. Go to 40tons.co, support the brand, get you a hat, get you a t-shirt, get your skateboard, get you whatever that you're into, get that and support that, please. And you'll be doing us some good. And if you can't do that, then email me at cv@40tons.co and show me how you can help. You might can be a mentor, give me some knowledge, or give me something that is free, and give me some wisdom on, I'm willing to listen to things that I can do, that I can better myself or help in the game, or just, write my book better, get my style better. How do you get your marketing better for your campaign, for your website? You might have some information, so you can just hit me up and give me some information if you can't do one or the other two.
And for me, you can visit 87months.com. It's numerical 87, and just tap in, and the essentials line will be dropping mid-June. So that'll be awesome. Everything rose gold. So that is a way to support me. And then, dear to my heart, how do you support those who are still currently incarcerated? You can visit lastprisonerproject.org. There's always a letter writing campaign available if you want to tap in with the inmates who are still incarcerated. There's a donate button. And right now, because what most folks don't know is that in order to receive sentencing relief as a federal inmate, you have to receive a presidential clemency. Clemencies only come from the United States of America. And I don't care who that president is, I think you have enough on your plate running the free world. And so Last Prisoner Project is attempting to present to the new administration ways to do mass clemency. So it's not one person at a time. So it's not like winning the lottery, and it becomes a process and a policy. And so we are accepting signatures right now for that petition to be submitted to the current administration. So that's like number one. How do we streamline this clemency process? And then how do we get Parker Coleman home?
Okay. Until we get the very last prisoner home. That's what this is all about. And so I just want to say thank you, Corvain and Evelyn, for being here on the Stay Human podcast today. I want to say thank you to Gibson Guitars for presenting this show. And thank you to everybody out there who's been listening, who cares about this issue. This is an issue that it doesn't just affect a small group of people. It affects the way our entire society it feels and it's growing or not growing, and the way whole communities are affected by this in so many levels. And so thank you guys for being here today, and tune in next week for another great episode of the Stay Human podcast. Peace.
Thank you.